Well, welcome back, everyone. Lights, camera, action. It's Make Our World Your Runway. You know, this is the weekly show that interviews the most fascinating individuals from the world of modeling, fashion, beauty, business, and even the entertainment industry. And as I always say, we have a fantastic guest and a show prepared for you today. But of course, before we begin, we want to thank the sponsors that make this show so possible every week. And that is the Global Trade Chamber, 100 Successful Women in Business, and Lux Salon, Queen Beauty Network, Tower Club, Royal Dames, Vita Designs, Casa Calabria, and the Bangladesh American Chamber of Commerce. So sponsors, thank you so much for making this show possible. And as always, remember to subscribe to the Global Trade Chamber YouTube channel so that you can see all the shows from Make Our World Your Runway and Success Stories. And I highly recommend our viewers to tune into Success Stories because the show features the most amazing women in the world of business and community service. From humble beginnings to successful entrepreneurs, these women will totally inspire you. And of course, get ready for some exciting conferences, speakers, and awards as 100 Successful Women in Business and the Global Trade Chamber are going to come to a city near you. And that next city is going to be Sunrise, Florida. It's going to be at the Sunrise Civic Center on May the 14th. It's a Women Business Expo. It's a full day of business conferences, networking, and connections to design, help women grow, scale, and lead. So once again, Business Expo and vendors, expert speakers, high-impact networking, and of course, nationwide exposure. And the time will be from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Now, it is a free event, and they do, I'm telling you right now, I have been to all these events, and they do pack. They sell out weeks ahead of time. So if you want to attend, please go to event at globaltradechamber.com or dial 954-839-8866 and sign up today. We also have speaker opportunities available and vendor spaces, but because the show is coming close, it is limited, but there's still a few spots available. So once again, please go to event at globaltradechamber.com or dial 954-839-8866 for all the information and sign up today, and I will see you there. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, lights, camera, action, we do want to get on to our show. And our guest today is a respected financier. She's Florida Supreme Court certified circuit civil mediator and arbitrator, a certified FINRA arbitrator, and a U.S. bankruptcy court mediator serving the Southern, Middle, and Northern District of Florida. She is also a candidate for the United States Congress, bringing deep expertise in finance, negotiation, and conflict resolution to public service. She was raised in a Haitian diplomatic family, was immersed early in international affairs, diplomacy, and cross-cultural negotiation, shaping her lifelong commitment to service, discipline, and global perspective. Her international background includes having lived in both London and Spain, further strengthening her understanding of global markets, governance, and multicultural engagement. And she was also recognized by Miami-Dade County Mayor Alex Pinellas for excellence in mediation, and she continues to champion the integration of emotional intelligence into leadership, governance, and decision-making. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, and of course she's going to tell you all about her wonderful accomplishments, please welcome Sendra Dorcé to Make Our World Your Runway. Sendra, welcome.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Angela. It is a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you, those of you watching. I hope that I can provide you with some insights into the world that I've navigated the last few decades. So thanks again.
Oh, no, it's a pleasure having you here. And of course, I know you're running for Congress, and I read some of the things that you were running on. And I think one of the things, well, there's two items that are very near and dear to my heart, but one of them happens to be healthcare.
Absolutely, healthcare. As I shared with you before we started on camera, I grew up with two siblings that had chronic conditions. So, of course, many insurance companies do not cover pre-existing conditions. Fortunately, my parents had the access to healthcare. And when they became adults, my siblings did have a challenge when the average employer cannot provide insurance for these special needs. And so I have made it commitment to myself and to the constituency that I will be addressing those once I get into Congress. Insurance companies need to know that there are people behind those member numbers. There are actual human beings who need support.
That's very true, because I had a pre-existing condition, okay? They didn't, believe it or not, they really didn't find it out until I got much older. But I was born, all right, everybody out there, my listeners, don't laugh. I was born in 53, so I'm telling my age. But anyway, back then, you know, I was a breech baby, so they didn't know much about that, okay? And my mother, she said, Angela, I love you. She said, but my pregnancy, she said, you gave me a run for the money. I said, gee, thanks. That's a great way of putting it. But later on, they found out that I had mitral valve prolapse, okay? And believe it or not, it didn't come out until I was about 27 years old. And they found it. And a very good cardiologist in Hackensack Hospital found it. But I was working at the time, so I was under a group plan. But later on, when I started to do different things, you're right, the insurance companies did not want to cover someone that had a pre-existing condition. And I could never get an answer as to why, but they just didn't. And one of the things that I always say is, you know, healthcare is not a privilege, it's a right.
It's absolutely right.
I don't care if you have $1 or you have $1 million. Everyone should be taken care of the same.
Absolutely.
You know, I was in a hospital last August, and, you know, I'm blessed. I have pretty good health care. But there was a person next to me that didn't have the exact same health care as I did. And I really felt bad because I'm getting all this attention and they're not. And I even asked the nurse, I said, you know, I said, she's not really well. She's very sick. Well, we have to wait for charity care. And I'm like, so that means you're going to let the person die? So when I read that about you, I said, oh, she's very near and dear to my heart.
Absolutely. So there needs to be more conversation about not just the premiums, but also the deductible. Before someone becomes covered, they have to meet a certain requirement for their deductible. And that could be pretty steep. I mean, we're looking at thousands of dollars. The average person does not have that money set aside. No. So that's why people, you know, rather than trying to meet that deductible, they just don't go to the doctor. And sometimes it can escalate to the point where it causes them to, you know, to transition. So we don't want that to happen in this great country of the United States.
That's true. And the technology today has really changed. Yes, I was just telling someone, you know, with a heart condition, they keep you on a statin because, of course, they don't want a cholesterol buildup. Well, statins can cause cramps in the legs, all right? But now there's a new statin now called Repatha. And when my cardiologist says, you're going to go on this, I said, okay. I said, is it one pill a night? He said, oh, no. He said, it's an injection. I said, wait a minute. I'm going to give myself an injection at home. I said, I'm afraid of needles. But it's not the typical needle that you think of. It's in this tube, okay? And I give it to myself right here in the leg, okay? You just click down on the red button. You feel the sting because the needle going in. You watch the fluid going in. When you hear the click, you count 1, 2, 3, pull the needle out. That's it. I'm like, when did this come about? This wasn't even 5 years ago. And they said, no, this is the new technology. Now, next year, anybody that has to be on a statin, twice a year. That's it.
Wow, that's amazing. The progress that they're making in healthcare is phenomenal. What needs to happen is the reduction in time to market and to make sure that patients can have access to this great healthcare. We know that in Europe, certain processes are in place for certain conditions when they are not in place here, or even closer to us in Canada. There are some availability for medications, affordable medications, where once they are in a certain zip code in the United States, the price triples. And so I am one who will advocate for the patient versus the companies. You know, I have worked for insurance companies, and I think there are some reasonable people in these insurance companies if they have the right partners in office that can advocate enough for the patient, for the human, actually. Let's not even call them human. You said it's a human right. It's a birthright. So everyone should have access, especially in this great country. We cannot call ourselves great until we make the American dream include healthcare.
Exactly. That is the American dream, healthcare. I mean, there are people living longer today. I mean, I've seen people going into 80s, 90s, 100s. And yes, technology has changed. Even back in 2015 when I had my hip operated on, technology changed there. Okay? And I had a great surgeon that back then, most people didn't know this. AI was around. It just wasn't brought out like it is today.
Right.
And when he was also a neurosurgeon, besides being an orthopedic surgeon. What he did when he placed my hip in, he actually took part of it and connected it to the spine so that the brain could start sending the waves. And I grew a bone over it. So when I recently had a CAT scan, they said, when did you have this hip replaced? I said, oh, back in 2015. We can't see it.
Wow.
They can't see it. They said, you grew a bone. So look at the technology even then. But from 2015 to now, it's like when they put stents in the heart, it's all robotic.
Correct.
So you're right. If we're going to be great, we have to keep that line of technology.
Absolutely. And I have to be careful. Of course, there's this sort of buzzword called Medicare, Medicaid for all, Medicare for all.
Right.
We have to make sure that these are applied in the right manner.
Yes.
We have to make sure, first of all, where the money's coming from. As taxpayer, I am concerned where our money is going and how we can prioritize. Healthcare for me is a priority,
Right.
and as I hear for you too.
Right.
So as much as I love to hear people say Medicare for all, I think medical for all taxpayers, I think that's where we need to start.
And I think it has to be looked at. You know, it was funny. I had an accountant one time, and he was doing my taxes, and I was going in there and complaining. And I said, oh, I got to pay tax on this, going to pay tax. He said, okay, wait a minute. He said, I hope you never have to use disability. I said, why? He said, because that's where some of your tax money goes.
Right.
And he was right, because I had to use it at one point. He said, but think about this. If you're really incapacitated and you need disability all your life, that's one thing. He says, but it should be there when you need it, not that it's a way of life. Same thing with welfare. If you really need it,
Correct.
okay, it's there. But it shouldn't be a way of life, okay? Unless he said there's an unforeseen circumstance that you have to go into. So I think that's where people get very misconstrued, okay? Yes, and Medicaid does have its requirements. Like my mother, she was $1 over, could not get Medicaid. And she used to complain. And I said, but Ma, there are rules and regulations. I said, I hate to say it, but that's the way it is, okay? But then again, she lived with my husband and I, so they felt she was living with us, was under our roof. The way they looked at it, 3 salaries coming in, Mom was protected. So there's a lot of different things that you have to look at, okay?
Indeed. No, we have to be careful because we know that there are a lot of people who perceive this country as being the great hope in the problem solver for everything that's happening around the world. But unfortunately, this viewpoint is not sustainable. There are children in this country who are going hungry.
Yes.
Because of unemployment or because of the death of a family member.
Right.
So we have to make sure that the American people that are here are cared for.
Right.
And that we don't encourage that people to come depend on the system. Dependency is not a good thing. The human beings are meant to be productive. I know sometimes when I go on vacation a little bit too long and I'm not productive, I get a little down. I'm looking forward to go back to work. So when I say work is doing something, sitting on the beach after a while gets a little bit too much. So we are meant to be productive.
Yes.
So the idea of welfare, depending on the government, it was never to be a long-term solution.
Way of life. Exactly.
Absolutely. And that goes for any type of healthcare solution. We need to make sure that people earn their way into this system called the
Yes.
United States.
That's right.
It's all about earning, and the opportunities are there if you've earned them.
If you earned them. You know, this is very funny, and then I'll change to a different subject. Last night I went to see The Devil Wears Prada 2, and I'm sitting there. Yeah, the second one. I loved the first one. It reminded me of myself. When I first went to work in New York City, I started out as Anne Hathaway, became the Meryl Streep. So I was watching this movie last night, you know, and there's people laughing at certain parts, and there was parts that were funny. My Wheels Are Turning. She was a journalist, and how she got Meryl Streep back on track was to start writing articles about her. And I said, wait a minute. I said, boy, that could be another avenue of work. And my husband looked at me and he said, what are you talking about? I said, well, you know I love to write. I said, and he says, you do, you write great emails. I said, she just gave me an idea. Mm-hmm. I said, because when I was, and it's true, when I was in high school, they wanted me to go into journalism. Mm-hmm. I said, I could start writing articles about the things that I do. I said, and start getting them out to magazines and just start creating the story. And he said, you got that all from a movie? I said, well, when I watch a movie, I said, I delve into a movie. It's like when I watched Gladiator and Russell Crowe said, what we do in life echoes in eternity. I remembered that, okay? And people said, you remember that? I said, oh yeah. I said, I just don't watch a movie just for the sake of going to it. I try to pick up something or learn something, because sometimes in some of these movies, there's life experiences that you can pick up.
Indeed. So movies for me is an opportunity to learn from outside my comfort zone. Right? Anything that comes to my space is an opportunity. And sometimes you get messages or solutions watching someone else or another story. So yes, I definitely relate with what you're saying.
Well, that's why I'm going to go buy a lottery ticket, because I had a dream last night that somebody owed me $28,000. I don't know what dream was crazy. And I got up this morning. My husband said, what were you talking about? I said, $28,000. That was my dream. The dream was so real that I woke up saying that. I said, all right, I got to go buy a lottery ticket now.
Well, let me know when you win.
Yes, absolutely.
I'll celebrate with you. I love to see people win.
Yes,
You know, we're all supposed to celebrate each other, aren't we? We are here to, not compete with one another as much as we are able to assist. We're in this together.
Exactly. And there's another thing that I love that you're running on, housing affordability.
Absolutely. So my background, I'm a banker, by training. I worked for Nations Bank, Bank of America, HSBC, Nations Bank. And my passion, and my mother was a builder. We had land and she built, I say her because my father had his, he was a military man and a diplomat. So my mother was the one always, the financier at home, the home economist. But yes, I'm passionate about housing. Sheltering is another birthright.
Oh, yes.
Everyone deserves to be sheltered, unless you choose not to be sheltered. And choosing is only based on, are you capable of making a decision whether to be sheltered or not? Because we know there are a lot of people who are not sheltered. They choose to, but that's because that's coupled with mental health issues.
Yes.
So when I'm articulating the message that I have or the vision that I have for this district, I'm always taking into consideration the needs. And one of the greatest needs is homeownership or sheltering. So the thing is, especially in the state of Florida, where we are plagued with hurricanes and tornadoes. Yes. So now can you imagine, I went to visit a certain area and I saw the way it was structured. I said, how can they even survive a hurricane?
Yeah.
Because 2 seconds of wind in that house will just definitely fall apart.
Oh.
So my focus on my passion is definitely affordable. I have a vision to partner up with developers, and there's land in those areas, and to have the developer built on government land so that can make it more affordable. I also go further to say communities built on home ownership more likely to reduce crime.
Right.
Someone who owns a home is less likely to commit a crime in their own backyard.
Yes.
So that is an incentive for all communities to provide homeownership. And of course, there are people who are not ready for homeownership. They can rent. Affordable rental is important. I've rented. But I can tell you that in the South Florida area, it's become very challenging to even rent.
Oh, unbelievable.
Because, people who are renting are, first of all, the rent is going up. This all happened during COVID, and the income is not meeting the
income is not meeting it.
So to tie that into my platform, to our conversation, is one of my goals also is to bring more high-paying jobs to the area. High-paying jobs, which means that people, professionals, a lot of people are moving from New York and from California, where there are higher paying jobs. Right. We have to make these parts, Florida, more, how can I say, more more accessible to people. They shouldn't have to take a pay cut to move to Florida. So pay cuts are something that most people, I had to do that. I moved from Washington and I ended up going as a banker, and I took a pay cut because there is something about, I don't know, when you move to the South, they expect you to have, it doesn't cost less. No, the living, I mean, the gas doesn't, maybe a little bit less, but not that much. So we have to take all that into consideration.
See, and my husband was lucky when he first got transferred down here. Okay, he got transferred with his job. He was working for Cable and Wireless, which was a British company, but they were in the United States. But his office was on 773rd Avenue in New York City. And back then, back in the 90s, oh my God, the salaries they were paying in New York. You wouldn't see that now in New York City. But back then, his base pay was $100,000, just his base without commission. So when we moved down here, that was like unheard of. What are you making? What is your base pay? Plus commission on top. And then, unfortunately, the financial crisis hit right after the trade centers went down and the company pulled out of the United States. And it was very hard for him to get back in the job market down here and make that kind of money. And like, we bought a beautiful home, but the mistake we made, we bought it in a new development and they were still building homes, otherwise I could have sold it. But they didn't have that kind of salaries down here, okay? But he was transferred down here with his New York salary. So if you get transferred with a company, it's a little different. But if you're moving down here, you're right. You got to start from scratch.
We have to create opportunities for strong professionals. That's how we built a better Florida, or better South Florida. A lot of bankers people from Wall Street are moving down to Palm Beach, into Miami, So this is now the new, just like you have a Southern White House, you now have a Southern Wall Street. So we have to be able to create opportunities for those strong professionals, and of course. That said, that is also going to help the tourism, which is another stream of income for the state of Florida.
Oh yeah, once people like that. I was watching a commercial this morning. I love the residency, but when I saw the price, starting at $5.7 million, I said, well, I guess I can't live there. But,
absolutely.
But what I like is that, I don't know if you're familiar with the Bahia Mar Hotel in Fort Lauderdale. Okay, and I'm actually doing my show there in September. Yeah, and thank you. And it's a beautiful hotel. But I became very good friends with the owner, Jimmy Tate. And Jimmy, his father started the company. Him and his brother, they're very much into real estate, and they've built a lot of Fort Lauderdale. I mean, they built it up. And the way the mayor says, it's New York City without the hustle and bustle. Okay, when you go down Las Olas now and you see those high rises, it wasn't like that 11, 12 years ago. Now, Jimmy the Bahia Mar is actually going to come down, okay, in, I think they said March or April of next year, and he's putting the St. Regis up. And of course, to take residency in the St. Regis, I can imagine what that's going to go for, but it's going to be stores and everything. But I was talking to him, I said, Jimmy, I know you have a point. I said, on what you're doing. I said, but I don't think there's going to be anything affordable, I said, in there to live. It's going to be a hotel plus residency. He said, but Angela, I'm bringing stores in. And almost something he said, I'm bringing high-end stores. People that have that knowledge to run a high-end store, that's going to bring jobs, work. He said, and just by putting that name out there, St. Regis, people will want to work in there. He says, but I'm going to create jobs at the same time. He said, look, I got to hire staff. He said, I've got to hire, if it's a residency and a hotel, I've got to hire people all over. He said, on one side of the coin, you're right, but on the other side, look at the amount of jobs that I'm able to bring in.
Absolutely. It has to balance out.
Yeah, that's what he was saying.
It definitely has to balance out. So when you have the hotel industry, you have a lot of working class jobs and you have a few managerial jobs.
Exactly.
We need to be able to create more executive jobs.
That's what he was saying. Create more executive jobs.
Create more executive jobs. Those people who can also live in the St. Regis, they should be able to, and so of course we welcome everyone in Florida, but we want locals to have those opportunities too.
Right.
Because we will have a safer Florida when we have higher paying jobs. Of course, there's the correlation with higher paying jobs, people who have more income, less likely to commit, crime on another person. If you're walking the streets, you're going to feel safer in a neighborhood where, people are employed. That versus where there is unemployment and it's how can I say, it's somewhat of underserved area. So that's why it's important for me to bring my knowledge in affordable housing to the district so that I can continue to help uplift the people in those communities that have been underserved. And there are many of them.
Oh, there are many of them, yeah. I mean, even where I live now, they've built the towers on the other side of us. And where I live in the one Boynton, okay, and it's a 5-story building, and they've done a beautiful job with it. But the one section, it's all stores, okay? So they're bringing in, like we've got, there's a Chinese restaurant in there now. There's also a Thai restaurant in there. We've got Tsunami Subs is in there. There's a Greek restaurant, UPS, which I love because all I have to do is walk out my door and there's UPS. So they're putting stores there. But what they've done is, I'm in the South Tower, we have the North Tower. Then across the street, okay, which is still in the one Boynton district, those are the townhomes, and then they have the lofts. So they've created a little something for everyone. But like you said again, rents are very high.
Absolutely. So we have to make sure that people understand that with these type of mix where you have the working class working in a building and you don't have that many opening, and we have to make sure to balance that off employment with small business ownership. Yes. So that's why when I will make sure to work with nonprofit organizations, state officials, to make sure that those small businesses, because someone can be employed and they can compensate by having their own business, to make sure that they can have access to capital to grow their business, to themselves become employers and eventually grow enough that maybe they can leave that employment opportunity to become the employer themselves. So it's multifaceted what I want to do for the district, because people, innately we know we want to grow, we want to evolve. And what better way to evolve than professionally? Yes. We know that it's life is better at home when the money is flowing. Yes, so we have to make sure that children have parents who feel financially secure and who can also contribute to the community, who can pay their taxes. And on the topic of taxes, I fully support the idea that the governor has. Of course, it's not part of my slate of policies, but I fully support the governor's effort to remove home ownership tax, homestead taxes, because you will find that once that's removed, one of the hurdles to home ownership will also be removed, because now you can afford more housing.
You can afford more housing, yeah.
On a monthly basis. Because as a financier, one of the challenges is when you go to apply for a loan for a home, it's both it's the home tax and it's the home insurance. Yes. So if we can reduce or eliminate the home tax, then we're halfway there.
Yeah, we're halfway there, exactly. And that will just make it more affordable for people to get into housing. Absolutely. And more people get into housing, then you're going to see the landlords with the rents. It's going to come down because now they're not going to be able to rent. Absolutely. Right now, renting is in demand because a lot of people can't save enough money to get into that house. Or if they're not a veteran, where they can get that special rate. Absolutely. Or, you can get in on a VA loan. Absolutely. So that's a very good point. But anyway, Max is telling me we've got about 5 minutes left, so what would you want to tell our viewers?
I would want to tell also on the topic of home ownership, it's another hurdle is the fact that the individual is competing with a lot of large organizations, private equity firms, venture capital firms, which I've worked with in the past and still do as a financier. But we have to give the average person opportunity to get to that home, because what happens is it takes about 30 to 60 days to get a home mortgaged, whereas these large organizations come in with cash and they buy you out. So the home ownership The homeowner is incentivized with cash versus waiting for a 60-day, mortgage. So we have to put some policies in place which gives priority to the individual. And I want to say that if people want to reach me to volunteer or to campaign, help me campaign, you will learn a lot. Politics is it's a good training ground for any type of leadership. So you can reach me at it's Sendra for Congress, Sendra for Congress, FOR.com. The phone number is 561-479-6556. And I just want to say thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to come here. And part of all of this is my effort to create safer communities for all in the district.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be on our show today. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm hoping that you've got a wealth of information. This has been an absolute fantastic show. It has also been a learning curve for me. And don't be afraid to get involved with politics. I hear a lot of people say that, but trust me, it is an education. And no matter what side you're on, you've always heard me say, find that common ground. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to Make Our World Your Runway. And of course, as always, stay tuned because we will be back next week with another fabulous show and guest. Have a great week.